take the phone call. For me, if my daughter is calling me and I'm in front of Sal understands. Yeah. And guess what? I get on him if he doesn't, because he used to be the other way too, right? I hear his son coming. All right, bro, I love you. I'll call you later. I hang up the phone. A man that prioritizes his family and puts his family first says a lot about that person.
Got a brother from another mother, Carlos Reyes. I'm not sure he's legal, but he is in this country, and he's my guest today. How are we doing, Carlos?
That is a clickbait if I've ever heard it.
Bro, you came how many times into this country illegal before you got citizenship?
Twice.
Twice. How does that happen? Did you get deported the first time?
No, actually, we voluntarily left the first time because we failed economically. And
wait, you failed economically in the United States and went back
to Mexico.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Very simple, man. So my mother, the first time she brought us over, she left us in Mexico for 2 years with our grandparents. And the first time she brought us over, she didn't really think it through, right? She didn't strategize. Her main objective was, I just got to get my kids over here.
Yeah, so she was a mom that wanted her babies.
That's it. And once we got here, she didn't really plan out for the expenses that now you're adding, some children into the mix, right? It's not just you. Now you got some children. You got a 1-bedroom apartment in California. As you know, California has always been very expensive. Yeah. And about 8 to 10 months, man, we're practically almost on the street. So my mom had no choice, but we had to go back to Mexico.
And was life better there in Mexico then immediately?
No, absolutely not. So here, let me just say this for people that don't know. Mexico, and I know a lot of Mexican people are going to not like what I'm about to say, but if you're poor in Mexico, you're pretty much third world country poor in Mexico. Like you're talking, no running water in some areas still to this day. No, this is the 90s we're talking about, by the way. It's a lot more developed now, but there's still areas in Mexico right now where there's no running water. I just went in June and visited my grandparents' property where we grew up, and sure thing, the neighbor doesn't have running water. They have electricity now, but they don't have running water. So Mexico was tough. And we went back there. You have to understand, we got a taste of the land of milk and honey, right, for 8 to 10 months. And we're like, man, this is incredible. And then now we fail, we're going back and we're like, dude, like we got to go back to dirt floors and dirt roads and no running water and no electricity at that time. So no, it wasn't a better situation for us.
You're this incredible American tale, right?
Yeah.
Like I think of my father, who's a German immigrant.
Yep.
He came to America. Yep. You met my dad.
Amazing guy.
And, has to figure everything out. He came here in his mid-30s, met my mom, had big old Mormon family, 9 kids, I'm number 4. And it was interesting just witnessing first-generation American get himself established here, and also how much that meant to him, because there were freedoms here that he didn't have in his country. That post-World War II economy, it was awful, and it was bleak, and it held no promise for a bright future.
Yeah.
And my dad wanted nothing more than to just have a fresh start and come to America. You on the second go-around, your mom got you here. You were 12 then?
Yeah, 1996, I was entering the 7th grade.
And you were more equipped this go-around, but you didn't come here to go to school. You came here to go to school and actually help the family financially survive and make it.
Yeah, so most of my childhood, brother, when I tell you that I've been working since I can remember, I've always that's where my work ethic comes from, is I had no choice but to develop a work ethic at a very young age.
What was that pressure like as a child? Being expected to work?
You didn't really have a childhood. You were pretty much a child who had to behave like an adult. And that took away a lot from me as a child,
Tell me some of the early gigs.
First venture that I had was I was going door to door selling bread in Mexico. Door to door. Like literally knocking on doors, selling bread. And the lady that was making the bread in the neighborhood, the deal was, she would make the bread, and we would sell the bread, and we would keep 50% of the earnings.
Got it. What about in America, the first job you had when you got here?
The first job that I had here was, it's funny, I convinced a illegal Mexican contractor to allow me to pick up their trash during that summer that I was going to enter the 7th grade, right? So usually the way that immigrants, the way that we do it is we don't come into this country and go straight to a white neighborhood, right? We come into this country and we go to where we feel more comfortable, which in this case, it was a predominantly Mexican/Latino Hispanic neighborhood. Yeah. So there was a lot of, by trade, right? Mexicans, we dominate certain trades. We dominate construction. Yep. We dominate landscaping, yep. Right? We dominate the food industry, right? We're the people making the food, right? So I saw this guy that he was working construction. He had his construction truck, and I'm like, hey, can I work with you? I need to make some money. I need to make some money to buy some uniforms. This school that I'm about to attend, my mom, like, don't get me wrong, she can get them for me, but it's going to put us in a bad spot. And also, I want some nice shoes. Like, I'm starting to see all the kids have nice shoes. My mom can't afford nice shoes, man. My mom can probably give me some Payless shoes. So I'm like, I'm already
Bro,
used to,
I wore Payless shoes as a kid growing up.
Hey, maybe you weren't working, right? So that's the difference. I was already used to hard work, right? Yeah. And before I got to the States, I was already bagging groceries in Mexico. Yeah. Right? I was already bagging groceries. So I just started working my whole life. And then when I got here, I asked the guy if I can go clean up the construction site. Hey, as you guys are tearing stuff down, I'm in a wheelbarrow as a little, 11, 12-year-old, whatever you are.
Pick it up, clean it up.
Entering the 7th grade, I'm cleaning up. And they're paying me cash at that time, right? So
did you buy your first pair of shoes that you wanted?
Absolutely.
What did you get?
At that time, it was some Charles Barkley's.
Okay.
Yep, some Nike Air Charles Barkley's. Yeah. With the air bubble all around the shoe.
Oh yeah.
Super cool.
Pump it up.
CB4. Yep.
Wow. So
CB34.
You went on to, you've done some really incredible things, right? You did get your citizenship.
Yep, 2012.
I was joking a little bit. But after that, you take a look at like who you've made yourself into last decade, and it's pretty extraordinary. Today, for those that don't know Carlos Reyes, he has over the last many years put people through a type of real estate training, a boot camp where he is specialized in wholesaling, fix and flipping, mastered the game of real estate, over 1,000 deals under his belt, and then scaled it to the point where you were never touching deals, you were very hands-off, but making millions of dollars doing this in virtually every type of economy, and then went on to basically go into the coaching sector where, geez, there are some pretty big names out there today that have run through your seminar
boot camps, trainings, mentorships.
Yeah, who are some of the people that you've trained that have hit it really big? Pace Morby went through at some point. He's killing it.
First and foremost, right? So Pace is the king of creative financing.
Yeah, he is.
Right? When Pace came to our boot camp back in 2018, extraordinary story. Laura, who by the way, first and foremost, I love Pace. I love Laura. I love everything Pace stands for, his whole entire family. And I remember the first time, so when Pace came to our boot camp, he actually had a franchise with Homevestors.
Okay.
Well, then we showed him hey, you don't really need this and this and this. Look, let me show you how to do this wholesaling thing, right? The first thing he did that next week was what? He either sold his franchise or he just told the franchise, I'm out.
Because he knew how to do it.
Because he's like, holy smokes, I'm about to start doing this on my own, right? Yeah. So incredible story there. And then, Pace went on to become, I was just texting him literally. I was talking to him the day before yesterday. And the dude, I was just telling him, like, bro, you're a machine. Because he's like, man, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm not working right now.
He's picked up thousands of doors.
Bro, the guy is a working machine. Like, seriously, the guy only sleeps about 3 hours a night, by the way. So very, very rare, specimen of a man. Ryan Pineda, he was doing a lot of fix and flipping in Vegas from around 2015. Him and I became good friends around 2015. And then in 2018, when I threw my first boot camp, boom, the guy comes over. He's like, holy smokes, dude, I didn't know you guys were doing it like that. Yeah. And he started wholesaling, right? Okay. And you saw what Ryan has done with his career. It's been amazing. Huge. Right? He has the Future Flipper program out there and stuff. We got, Austin Rutherford, he was one of the first individuals to pay us a good amount of money for coaching and mentorship.
Dude, there's like a dozen people out there that Tiffany, have hit up really
Tiffany
big
High, and they got a great program out there. Tiffany and Josh High, they do very well. I think their coaching program makes 7 or 8 figures to last time I checked, right? Yeah. But they came through not only our boot camp, but our mentorship, right? Yeah. And there's been countless of people, man, that have come through, and that's how we actually like built a track record. you can't build a track record unless you really help other people succeed.
Now, what's kind of cool about this kind of real estate, for those that don't know, what you're really doing is you're acquiring deals at just like monstrous discounts.
Yeah.
And this is very sophisticated stuff. This isn't like driving around in a car or dropping bandit signs.
Yeah.
You guys are buying massive loads of data, large lists that you're then marketing to, and you're doing ringless voicemail and email drops and direct mail. You have people overseas that are making phone calls for you. You got people. Is it in Egypt?
Yep, virtual assistants that are doing a lot of the prospecting. Yep.
Okay, so you've got people that are prospecting for you.
Google AdWords campaigns going on.
So you scaled it really, really big and got it to a point. So for those that don't know, you can use all these marketing methodologies. You can find houses. Find a house for $300,000 that you can pick up for $200,000 or $180,000. Or geez, I just met one of your students that has like this $1 million deal that he's picking up for just over $700,000.
710.
710 that you're recommending.
It's
I think I
worth about
overheard
$1
he's
million.
going to list it for $950.
Yeah.
Might make over $200,000.
God willing.
And so you've been showing people how to do this, and what it's doing is it's creating solutions for people. You're solving for low income. Like, you're showing people realistically how to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, of course, in some cases, you have people that are clearing seven figures.
Absolutely.
And you yourself have been doing that for years.
Yes.
So what are you up to right now? What's your next? Are you still doing the whole boot camp thing?
Well, yeah. So, real estate saved my life, specifically wholesaling.
That's
right?
that's a big claim. What do you mean it saved your life?
It saved my life because, I went from struggling financially to the point where my wife and I, we were splitting the bills. We couldn't really take our baby girls on any, or we had one baby girl at the time, on any real vacation. Like our vacation was maybe a short drive because that's all we can afford, and stay at a really bad hotel, like a Motel 8 or something. And no disrespect to any of the hotels out there, but what I'm saying is, now we stay on the beach, right? We rent an Airbnb and we stay on the beach, right?
So your
on the
first
sand.
wholesale deal, what was the deal that you would say for you saved your life?
Well, that's what I wanted to tell people is, it's beautiful because I read a little $10 book and I was just in such a desperate situation that I was willing to do anything. The pain of staying the same exceeded the pain of having to change and put into work. So I read this little book and it told me to do, hey, if you want to become a successful real estate entrepreneur and you want to have financial freedom, right? Well, you don't need a license. You don't need a real estate license. You don't need cash. You don't need money, and you don't need credit. I was like, man, that sounds like I qualify. A lot of people right now that are listening or watching, they qualify. If they don't have a real estate license, they don't have money, they don't have credit, they qualify to do what saved my life,
And what
which
did
is
the
real
book tell
estate
you to
wholesaling.
do? What did it tell you?
The book told me to go drop 100 bandit signs every weekend, and I was dropping 120 to 150.
And you had to fork out some money for a bandit sign, right? I mean, like corrugated plastic, couple $100.
Like 50 to 70 cents max, because my wife was she was handwriting them for me.
So a couple $100 and some black Sharpies.
Yep,
20. And you're doing the old school, I buy houses, here's my phone number.
Brother, I have not dropped a bandit sign since 2013.
But I want to know, that bandit sign, like, did it generate some phone calls?
Yeah. So let me just, 2,400 bandit signs later and 6 months later, right? I was getting a couple phone calls here and there, and it wasn't anything serious until 6 months in. I get a phone call by a landlord who was tired of being a landlord. She was just tired of having tenants that, sometimes would pay the rent. Sometimes the house would break down. Like certain things in the house would break down. She was just tired of dealing with it. So she calls me off a bandit sign and we make the deal happen. I didn't know how to run numbers. I didn't know how to underwrite the deal. I didn't know how to write a contract out. I didn't know how to monetize the deal. But I was doing a lot, like taking a lot of action, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. Sure thing. I grab a contract. I freaking met her at Starbucks. I put her under contract, and then I sold that contract, or I assigned that deal, right? That piece of paper to a person that was going to fix and flip it. He was going to rehab it.
Yeah.
And I made $5,000 on that deal. And to this day, right, it's the smallest amount of money that I've ever made in wholesaling. But guess what? It's the deal that proved the concept, and it's the deal that saved my life. It changed the trajectory of my life forever.
Stupid or courageous, the whole 6 months of bandit sign thing. I mean,
Ignorance is bliss.
Someone might say that every weekend for 6 months, 24 whatever
2,400
weeks in a
Valentine's,
row,
yeah.
you dropping signs off, picking signs up, dropping them off.
Brother, I was not going to stop until I got a deal. So, hey, it could have been, I'm happy it was 24 because it could have been 5,000.
Okay.
Because that's the kind of person I am.
Yeah.
Is I'm one of those like overcommitted people, right? It's like, okay, I'm not committed. But once I'm committed, I'm committed until I die, right? And it was like, hey, this is either going to happen or I'm going to die trying.
And 5,000, that was a life-changing amount of money for you. Why?
Because I was making that a month.
Okay, so you made in a deal what you otherwise had to make in a month.
And I used to have to work about 60 hours a week to make that.
Oh, wow.
So that when I tell you that saved my life, right? Watch this. I take that $5,000
Yeah.
and I put it into direct mail marketing.
Okay, so you leveled up your game from corrugated signs to dropping
By the
physical
way,
letters in the mail.
you're not even talking about the flyers that I used to print out and put on windshields or the door knocking that I used to do in neighborhoods. Wow. You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
so I did all of that until I landed this first deal. And then I took $2,500 of the $5,000 and I put it into a direct mail campaign that got me around 5,000 letters. Okay. And off of those 5,000 letters, I got 3 deals at $20K a piece.
So you made $60,000
off $2,500. And then I did it again. And then I made $30,000. So now off of $5,000, I made $90,000.
Yeah, 95, including the first 5.
Yeah,
right. $95,000.
Yep.
And from there, you just took off.
From there, I just started investing into, better into a CRM, right? Into better marketing.
So you added some intelligence and some new marketing channels.
Now I had a little bit of money to improve my resources and my tools.
When does it feel like it started really impacting your family, where you guys personally just didn't have the money, you were scraping by? Like, what were some of the first things you bought that really just felt like a splurge?
2016, when I retired my wife.
Tell me about that.
3 years. Can you imagine?
3 years.
3 years later, I retired my wife. October of 2016 is when I retired my wife.
And that was meaningful to you because she didn't like what she did?
No. That was meaningful to me because now she can raise my child, our child.
Yeah. So you didn't want her to be the split working mom?
No. And people have to understand that, it's not about like being a man and, I'm the breadwinner. If you have children, you want to do your absolute best for those children, right? Yeah. And if you or your significant other, your wife, don't raise that child, one of you doesn't raise that child full time, somebody else is going to raise that child. And that somebody else could be the grandma, right? Or the grandpa, or the aunt, or the government, right? Someone's going to raise that kid. So to me and my wife, our dream was like, man, I grew up with a working mom, so I didn't know what that was about, but she grew up with a mom that stayed at home. And she was used to mom being there for, all of the school functions and all of the practices.
And she wanted that?
And, I think we both wanted that. I think we both wanted to give our children the best life possible.
So you bring your wife home and she gets to quit her job, and that was so meaningful.
Well, watch this. A few months later, March 2017, I retired my mother.
Tell me about that.
Brother, can you imagine, right? Like, you are this Mexican woman that doesn't speak English to this day. You make all the sacrifices. You work your butt off, sometimes 2-3 jobs at the same time when I was a teenager. And your son just says, hey, mom, right? I start asking her questions. Hey, why are you still why are you still going to this job? How much is it paying you, right? Oh, it's paying me this, and this, right? I said, okay. What if I were to replace that income for you? Would you retire? She was like, are you serious? I wouldn't know what to do, right? I said, Mom, why don't you live out the rest of your life the way that you should? You're in your 60s now.
Yeah.
Let's every Thursday, I'm going to pay you what your job was paying you every Thursday. And she just couldn't believe it. Brother, it took her like a year to get used to it.
Really?
It took her like a year and she still thanks me every Thursday.
Wow.
Every Thursday when I pay her, she's still, son, thank you so much. My mom right now, today actually, She's headed to Mexico for a few days, right? You know, and I'm like, hey, Mom, let me know if you get down on some funds in Mexico for whatever reason. I said, just let me know and I got you, right? That's the kind of freedom that really matters. It's not the fancy cars or the fancy watches or, you know, the clothes. No. It's the freedom that I provided for my family.
So my parents, I remember just how much they fought about money growing up. And I remember I was really young. I may have been like 8 years old. I went downstairs to talk to my mom and dad about something. I had no idea I was going to walk in and kind of eavesdrop on a fight.
Wow.
And my parents were fighting about money again. And I was really young. I didn't really understand some of the words like debt and mortgage and remortgage and pay off debt and just I just remember the anger. Remember the frustration that they would fight about not having enough money. Yeah. And I think any kid probably would have been afraid by that. But I remember that particular time I wasn't. I remember feeling God tap me on the shoulder saying, listen up, like this will be your responsibility someday. And even though I got 8 other brothers and sisters, I remember that I made that promise to myself that I will choose a career and a path in life where someday I'll be able to take care of my parents. And 13 years ago, my parents lost a business in their 60s, late 60s, went bankrupt, lost everything. And I was in a position to honor that promise. And my parents moved from Seattle to Utah. Yeah. They've been living with me ever since. And, it's interesting. There's a lot of cool things I've done with money, right? Private jets and just a lot of world travel. And there's some even really cool humanitarian things I've done.
Absolutely.
But none of it really matters as much to me as honoring that promise to my parents. So I can't imagine.
Beautiful.
I can't imagine what it's like for you to
Brother, I love
taking care of your mom.
I love, and this is one of the reasons why I truly, I love you, because you are now in a philanthropy phase of your life. Yeah. I saw what you did last year, right? Well,
you helped me. You used your event.
Yeah.
I mean, bro, when you put on one event a year, and I know that you have monetization goals and outcomes, and you said, hey, come, you actually called me up and said, come speak at my event. And what do you want? And I didn't want to do a call to action or sell something. I asked if I could raise money for our trip to Ukraine. That was our first of 3 trips so far to Ukraine. And you said yes, and we raised over $300,000.
380.
Yeah, so almost $400,000.
Yeah.
And we 4 weeks later, we were on a plane to Ukraine, and we were bringing medical supplies to babies.
I saw medical aid, food, water, everything.
You caused that, brother.
Well, you know what? Your team.
You didn't know me. That was the coolest thing that you could have given a stranger that you wanted to have speak at your event.
But thank you, brother. But you know what? Like that's what my heart has always been. I think it's because of where I come from. Yeah. I just want to help and serve to whatever capacity. And, for some reason, it's like I help and I serve, and then God just multiplies that in some way, And I see that happen over and over and over. There's actually a book about it called The Go-Giver, by the way, which I just stumbled upon maybe 2 years ago. But I was very, very, very proud of you for you to contribute to the world in that fashion.
I appreciate that.
What's up, Kris Krohn here. I am pausing my own podcast to make sure that you have my cell phone number. Because as you're listening and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could text Kris and ask him a real estate question or a business question, a marriage question, a health question, I got news for you. The phone number is right here. It's 385-217-3477. Save this in your phone and literally start texting me right now. Just drop your name and say, hey, Kris, it's whoever you are, and ask me a simple question. Let's go.
So, Carlos, I want everyone to have a chance to it's like we get the money side of you. I really get the generous side of you. You have an amazing story. What are some things that people don't know about you?
I would say that I really like to be at home and isolate myself. Like my buddy, one of my buddies was asking me yesterday, right? He's 42 and he's single, right? And he's like, Carlos, you should move over to the other side of town where there's more people and there's more networking going on. And I said, hey, brother, I said, listen, I like my little acre that I have in the middle of nowhere next to Rovey Farms. Right. I like a very quiet, downtime.
Well, I know that about you because during the summer, you'll bounce over from Phoenix to Sedona. And
Actually, I do that all year down, all year round.
so you've got favorite hikes. And when I went down there with my wife, you were there with top recommendations.
We happen to just bump into each other at that
know.
time, right? I go up there about once a week, once every other week.
What's that about? What's the draw? Besides the incredible energy.
It's a spiritual day for me. I slow everything down and I reset and I ground myself. Yeah. You know, I don't think we as entrepreneurs, we're just, man, we take so many things for granted, man.
Yeah.
You know, we take so many things for granted. Like we're just go, right? We don't stop and smell the flowers. We don't reset ourselves.
But you have a history of burning out, right? Like
Yes,
I remember when I
3
first met
times.
you,
Yeah.
we were looking at like, doing some things together, and your big concern back then was like, oh, this sounds like a lift.
Yep.
And at one point you owned 30, how many different companies?
31 companies.
31 companies before you started scaling it back in.
Yep.
So you've got some different priorities on the way that you spend your time these days.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you do aside from hitting Sedona to like keep from burning out?
Cold plunging every morning, right? I just started that in April. Brad Lee, the guy from Vegas, and myself, we got our cold plunges together. His was a gift that the company said, hey, because he's a much more popular individual than I am. the company, the plunge, gave him a plunge and said, hey, just put this up every now and then on your social. We're good. I bought mine. And then him and I started plunging together in April. That's one thing that I do every single day. I actually plunged this morning here in Utah, but I had to do it in a pool that was 50 degrees. My plunge at home is 38 degrees.
What do you enjoy about the plunge?
It resets my entire nervous system. You know, it gives me a lot of vitality. It gives me a lot of energy. It gives me a lot of clarity. And I love to do it early in the morning because, in my opinion, what is harder than being in 38 degree water, freezing cold water, for about 4 to 5 minutes, right? I remember my brother-in-law was coming in a few months ago, and it was like 6 in the morning. And he goes, hey, how's your day going? And I'm walking past him, and I just got out the plunge, and I said, well, I just took care of the hardest part of my day, so it's all downhill from here. Yeah.
You talk a lot about God, and like I don't know if you can separate it out from your religious observance or just your spirituality, but ever since I've known you, doesn't matter whether it's at your event or whether we're just talking one-on-one, you're always talking about God.
Yeah, for me, it's relationship. It's not about religion. It's about relationship, and if you think about it, I didn't grow up with the Father. I didn't grow up with the earthly father. So my heavenly Father was the only relationship that I had with the Father. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
My heavenly Father is the only relationship that I had with any type of father.
Yeah.
So I remember being 5 years old and already talking to God. I was already talking to God, and God, he not only was God, my Father, my heavenly Father, but he was like my friend, my confidant. You think about it, right? If you feel alone one day and there's no human being to talk to, right? Like you can always talk to God.
When did that start for you?
5 years old.
Really?
5 years old. Yeah, at 5 years old. And so you have to understand, in the history of my family, the lineage, my mother's father, my great grandfather, right? Actually, my grandfather, he was the first evangelist in the history of our family. And then from him came my mother and a bunch of 11 other siblings, and most of them have churches, and they're evangelists and pastors and preachers, right? And then here now, let's take one more generation down, right? Watch this. I remember a few months ago we baptized my oldest. She's 11 years old. She was 10 at the time. We baptized her, and there's a picture of my mother praying over her and me praying over her, over my 11-year-old, and that's 3 generations of serving the Lord in one shot.
Wow.
So if anything, that kind of was embedded in me at a very early age.
So this phrase marketplace preacher, it's this kind of ideology that there are these entrepreneurs that are kind of mixing kingdom work with their entrepreneurial work.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself a marketplace preacher?
I would consider myself a marketplace apostle, right?
Which means?
I'm here to serve and deliver. I'm not a prosperity pastor, right? Like a lot of people, like, no, I'm sitting here and I'm giving you the experience and the wisdom that God has given me that has worked in my life, right? And that's the word that I'm spreading. I am a follower of Christ, and my goal is to be like Christ every single day. And if you take a look at what who Christ was, right? He was a healer. He was filled with love. He cared about his neighbor. He served the Father. That's my goal. My goal is and you have to remember, Christ. If you talk about on a David Hawkins level, on the energetic scale, there's something called Christ consciousness that no one has ever achieved but Christ. Not Gandhi, not Muhammad, none of these folks have ever achieved the energetic scale the achievement that Christ achieved on the David Hawkins energy scale. So for me, like I said,
is that a goal of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you
imagine?
In this life? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, that's what Christ, if you think about it, look at what people are like, I can never be like Christ. And don't get me wrong. I think it's we're far from it. But the fact of the matter is he left the blueprint for us to be like Christ.
And if you can do bandit signs every weekend for 6 months,
you're
going to stick with this goal.
It comes down to two things, right? If you really want to be like Christ, commitment and obedience. And that's what I'm bringing that to the marketplace, because I know that our business and our finances will always be a reflection of who we are.
You've got some weird habits.
Like
it doesn't matter what kind of business meeting or how big the business meeting is. If your little daughter calls you, you'll stop the meeting to talk to her.
Well, I think, that's something I learned.
Not only that, but we used to have like standard Monday morning phone calls until you were having daddy time taking your daughter to school when school started back up. And that really messed up our schedule.
Well, let me just say this, right? I can't sit here and tell people or demand from people how they give them advice on how they should live their life if I'm not doing it myself, right? For me, it's principles and standards, right? And for me, you have to understand, right? You have to understand, if the person calling you is more important, and I love you, is more important than the person in front of me, right? Take the phone call. For me, if my daughter is calling me and I'm in front of Sal understands. Yeah. And guess what? I get on him if he doesn't, because he used to be the other way too, right? I hear his son coming. All right, bro, I love you. I'll call you later. I hang up the phone, right? Because that's who I want to surround myself with, is people because brother, I'll tell you what, a man that prioritizes his family and puts his family first says a lot about that person.
Well, you say as a dad that you need to be able to wear a lot of hats.
Well,
you never had a dad. What are the hats that you feel that you're supposed to be wearing?
Well, I'll tell you what. So there has to be a transition, because it's very hard. People like you and me, it's very difficult to turn it off. So for me, there's a transition. There's like a transition portal for me.
To go from like dad work
to
mode?
go from to a businessman
to dad.
To, okay, take that hat off.
Yeah.
And then put the husband and hat on, family man hat on, right? For me, it's the garage door. So I finish my phone calls either on the driveway or in the garage. And then as soon as I'm about to walk through that garage door, that phone is off. And I have a rule. In the house. No business in the house.
So 3 weeks ago, I had an event and I needed you to speak on like a Tuesday and a Thursday.
Yeah, I remember.
And you're in Phoenix and I'm in Salt Lake, and you don't have a private jet yet. And so
next year, God willing.
I know, but commercial, bro, you fly
Commercial
here.
Stuff. Yeah.
You do your thing. Most people would have just overnighted. That night you went home.
Yep.
And then the very next day you had to fly back.
Yep.
Why? Like, what could you have possibly gained in those hours instead of just madness, bro? Chaos.
2 reasons. I know. 2 reasons. Taking my kids to school, or actually, number 1, putting them to bed and taking my kids to school the next morning. To me, that's worth the flight. To me, right? And God willing, because it's tough. It's tough. Like my wife texted me last night, right? I called them to say goodnight. talked to both of them, and she goes, you know how I know you're a good daddy? And I said, how? She says, because the girls are missing you really bad right now.
Wow.
That was last night because I stood the night here.
Yeah.
Right. And then this morning, obviously, I talked to my wife and I talked to my 11-year-old. Right. So for me, man, I don't ever want my family to almost to resent business.
Yeah. You want to.
I want them to be able to say, like, if God forbid, brother, and I pass, you know, we're all going to pass away at some point. We're going to die. But my eulogy, right? My celebration of life, I don't want my daughters to go up there and say something like, my dad was a great man.
Yeah.
He worked a lot and he provided for us. That's not how I want my story to go.
How do you want your eulogy to sound?
I want my daughters to go up there and be like, I don't think there's ever been a better father in the existence of the world. Like, my father was my superhero. He was everything and more that I ever needed, and he was there every single time.
You created a special moment at your daughter's graduation. You were a speaker.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So it wasn't her graduation. It was the 8th grade graduation.
Okay.
She was entering the 6th grade, right? Her school asked me to come and speak to the 8th graders, and she was just so proud of me. You know, and you know what's funny is I have brought her up on stage when there's over 1,000 people in the audience, but to her, this meant the world to her because this was among her peers and in her school, right? Her father, like her dad. How cool is that? I didn't have a dad that came and spoke to my school, right? So for her, it meant a lot. And because it meant a lot to her, it meant a lot to me.
So one of the first big impressions that you made on me, I don't know if you knew this, but it was you were at my house, and your team had flown in with us, and it included a brother-in-law, Adrian. And I could see the pride that you just shared with me, how you plucked him from a pretty awful industry. I mean, trucking is the largest industry, #1 job in America, but it's a hard job, right? Like you get a bad back,
especially
herniated
overnight.
discs.
Overnight.
Yeah. And you were beaming with pride as you talked about what it was like for you to pull him out and show him a better way. And he's been able to do millions of dollars now in this real estate venture with
And he
you.
just bought his dream home.
And he just bought his dream home.
Yeah.
And what's it like? Like, I just see how much personal pride and love you put into that man. I feel like you treat all the members of your team that way.
Absolutely. You know, I want anybody that's around me, you know, I don't want to motivate them. I want to inspire them, right? I want to inspire them. And inspiration.
What's the difference between motivate and inspire?
Motivation, in my opinion, it's a temporary emotion, right? Like, I'll give you an example. You know, I could be motivated tomorrow to go to the gym, but if I'm truly inspired for something much greater, I'm going to go to the gym no matter what, every single day until whatever it takes to accomplish my goal. Inspiration comes from in spirit. Like, it's an internal thing. Motivation, in my opinion, like I said, it's a temporary emotion.
Yeah. So last year when you and I started courting, if you will, right? Our two companies coming together, looking at doing some things together.
Dating.
Dating. We kind of represent, I think, the great debate in real estate, because you're the fix and flip guy, and I'm the buy and hold guy.
Wholesale and fix and flip.
Sure. But I mean, we'll get technical, but the reality is whether you're wholesaling for quick cash or you're going to fix and flip for some bigger dough.
It's quick cash.
Right? Yeah. It's all about real estate a little bit more as a job, even though you got systems to get out of
active
that job.
income.
It's active income, right? And you're this proponent of you can make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year through real estate. And here I am, this other guy that's just like, shoot, I've never made millions of dollars a year through actively doing anything in real estate, but
holding
passively. I buy a house every single day without money and without credit.
Yeah.
And it's building this monster portfolio, right?
Yep.
And it's this idea of like, well, do you want to make millions a year or do you want to build like a legacy?
Generational wealth.
Generational wealth, right? So we ended up coming together. What was that like when you met me? Was there a part of you that wanted to see if you could convince me of your ways? Was there a part of you that was excited to see what I was up to in the buy and hold space? Like, was there a secret agenda? What was really going on when we really got together to meet? Was there an ego war?
You know, I don't want to say that there was an ego war, but I definitely respected you for what you were doing and how you were doing it, right? One of the biggest regrets that I have in my real estate career, right, is that I did not hold enough properties. And even to this day,
Yeah.
even to this day, I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman out there right now. He wholesaled the house to me for $80,000. Sorry, he made $80,000 on an assignment fee.
Yeah, basically, you found a sick deal, gave it to you, and
I bought it from him. Right?
Yeah.
Watch this. So what I did, I bought it for $270 from him. Okay, he had it at $190. You get what I'm saying? He bought it at $190, sold it. Actually, he never even closed it. He just assigned the piece of paper to me.
He had the right.
I closed it.
He had the right to get
the
it
property.
190, and then he basically sold you the paperwork
270.
for 80 grand more.
270.
Yeah.
So what I did was I paid $2,500 last week. I cleaned up the house. I listed it on the market as is for $340, and they pay the closing cost. Cash as is, they pay the closing cost. I put it on the market. Okay. Flat fee listing $1,500. We got an offer today for $340 on that deal. So I'll make 40 something K on this house.
Yeah.
In a week's time. That guy made 80. I'm making 40 something. I think it's 42.
But you still don't have a portfolio.
But that's a house that I could have possibly held on to.
And made some good money on.
And passively make some good money on and build generational wealth. So again, I respect, you, because I think that your model is amazing. But a lot of the people that do your model don't do my model.
That's because they don't have if there's one problem that I have in my community, I've got a lot of people that are like, okay, cool, Kris, like I get it now. Everything is set in motion. I'm going to wake up in 20 years to a multi-million-dollar portfolio. But I want to retire now.
Well,
and I don't have active income now.
Exactly.
And I look at what you're doing. I'm like, geez, like you showing people how to make $500,000 a year, $1 million a year, whatever. That's game-changing money for people.
Well,
I've been telling people for years, until you're making financial life starts at $500,000 a year, not at $100,000, not at $200,000, $500,000.
I agree. The guy you talked to today that sold me this house and made $80K, the guy's made $150,000 in the last 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
That's actually life-changing to make $150K in 2 to 3 months when you were making $60,000 at your 9-to-5 job for 7 years.
Don't get me wrong. My very first house I bought, I made less than 20 grand my first year. By signing on that deal the next year, my net worth increased over 40 grand.
That's
and just
amazing.
by signing on a piece of paper, and I rented out the basement, and it covered the entire mortgage. So I was living for free. And it's just like, they say that your mortgage or your rent is supposed to be your biggest expense. I just literally eliminated mine in a single deal. And it was so mind-blowing to me, and it changed everything because I could start getting ahead. So I guess one of the things that I want people to listen here is you and I have been putting our heads together for the last year thinking that we should get together and do something.
Yep.
And we've been dreaming of this game called, we're calling it Property. Okay, it's even on the man shirt. And it's this idea of saying, let's end the debate.
Yep.
It's not about fix and flip. It's not about buy and hold. It's about everything.
Yeah.
And this idea that's like, hey, find
like an entire 360.
Yeah, like find 4 really good deals and keep the 4th, right?
Yes.
Like wholesale or flip 3 of them.
Yep.
Put yourself in a position to make $1 million a year.
Yep.
And then whether you pick up 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 homes a year, build a portfolio, and it means that you can have the really good income today, but someday never have to ever work again.
How amazing is that, by the way? Not only do you build, you try to become rich today, not when you're 60.
Yep.
Right? You have great active income, and then now you're also securing this generational wealth thing down the road,
Yep.
It's never been done before. I've never seen it, and I've been in this game a very long time. I've never seen something even close.
Well, we'll have to see if people catch on and like it. I have a funny feeling.
Oh God.
I have a funny feeling.
Someone's going to replicate. Is that what you're saying?
No, I have a funny feeling it's going to turn out well.
Oh, this?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's going to turn out very well.
Independent valuation over the next 5 years between like $3 and $5 billion.
So what kind of multiple would a company, just based off, let's just say it makes 72, let's just say it makes like $85-90 million a year in this industry, real estate.
In passive income?
In passive income.
That's going to receive a really high multiple.
Got it. Would you say 5 or 6?
No, bigger.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, on a subscription model like this, I bet you're going to be hanging out somewhere between 8 and 12x.
Okay.
You're doing enough revenue that big private equity is going to be very interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guaranteed exit.
Then I guess we'll have to see in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
In the next 3 to 5 years. But I've done the math. I've done the math because I've ran a lot of different businesses. I've built a lot of businesses from the ground up.
Yeah.
Right? Built and scaled them. And I've actually merged and acquired other businesses. I have a solar company, for God's sakes, right? And I got a medical company, solar company, all kinds of different companies. I got a freaking coffee company, right? But I think that this right here might carry the most potential.
Well, it certainly has the chance to create a lot of financial freedom for a lot of people. Carlos, if people want to follow you, by the way, I just want to give my personal opinion. Sitting here and interviewing my friend is actually really fun. I didn't know Carlos a year and a half ago. We're relatively new to each other. But the questions that I've asked Carlos are really just based on a lot of love and respect that I have for him. I do think he's an awkward duck. I think he's living his life super different than a lot of other people. I think the way he prioritizes his family is abnormal. I think the way he prioritizes his health is abnormal. And I think when it comes to finance, he's got his heart 100% in the right place, which is always trying to find win-wins for other people. Mm-hmm. I think he's a rare breed of human being and someone that I deeply love and respect. And it's why I don't mind partnering with him as maybe an awkward duck myself. But brother, you clearly have a mission to change the world. You're doing it in really, really beautiful ways. If people want to learn more about you, where should they find you?
Carlos Reyes on Instagram, @Carlos Reyes. That's the easiest place.
I'm going to find him.
Absolutely.
Guys, go find Carlos, see what he's up to. And the last thing I'll share is that when you decide, who you want to mentor with, who you want to coach with, when you're deciding who you want to learn from, there's a lot of choices out there. And my biggest advice that I tell people is it's super tantalizing to look at someone's results and their relevancy. But I don't think that's nearly as important as character. And today's conversation was really a deep dive into your character, because we can look at your outward results, we can look at the money that you're making, and we can say, yeah, he's a worthy mentor. And I would say, well, raise your standards a little higher. It's not just, does he have the results? And it's not, is he just relevant in today's marketplace? It's, who is he as a person? I hope after today you have a much better understanding.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Carlos Reyes is.
Thank you.